Some 16 years ago, Double Fine made a platform game that was about as inventive as they come. Back then the team had little experience working on 3D platformers, but what they lacked in technical expertise they more than made up for in creativity. Psychonauts 2 is a slicker, smoother title, and one of the most memorable experiences I've had in a long time. It's a carefully orchestrated ride that straps you in tight and shoots you along a dark, twisting ribbon of track. The track has a few bumps in it, but you'll feel so heady by the end you may not even care. It's only really once you step off the ride that you start to notice a few unfortunate side effects. Those we'll deal with later, but first... This game has you hooked from the very beginning. The first mission is a fast, frictionless affair, introducing players new and old to Raz's psychic abilities in a fun, intuitive manner.
Fire! It hurts! Help me!
It also sets up the mystery plot of the sequel in a matter of minutes. Like the first game, it rewards those who listen closely to the dialogue, cluing them into the underlying nature of things.
Fox in the basket and the egg in the ocean.
You put the egg in the basket, and the old egg in the box, and the box in the ocean.
Simple.
The environments are wonderfully realised. The Mother Lobe acts as the centre of operations for the Psychonauts, and conveys all the majesty of a wonder of the world. Inside, Agent's offices are full of elaborate details that make them feel uniquely their own. Outside, even the rocks are covered in lush vegetation, while wooded areas contain all sorts of curious animals. The story-critical missions take place inside the minds of various characters in and around the Mother Lobe. Each character hides a dark secret, which Raz must uncover by venturing deep into their psyche. Doing so exposes more of the murky roots of the psychic spy agency known as the Psychonauts, while bringing Raz one step closer to the identity of a mole. Jumping inside the mind of each new character is a treat, like unwrapping a mystery present on Christmas morning, except the present doesn't suck. That's because each level has been crafted by a very capable set of hands. It's all about the details. Surfaces are richly textured and the lighting sings. Teeth glisten, gums gleam. You can even make out the smallest veins on these leaves. Mental landscapes are conveyed with great depth and clarity, to the extent that you really do feel like you've tumbled into someone else's mind. The visuals lend the story a real sense of weight and cinematic spectacle. The game still has that Saturday morning cartoon look, but elevated to the scale of a Hollywood epic. That epic feel is bolstered by Peter McConnell's superb soundtrack. Walking around the Mother Lobe is accompanied by a sweeping orchestral score, fully immersing the player in their palatial surroundings. The music always seems perfectly in tune to the mind you're in. A neon-lit casino is soundtracked by bright hot jazz, the drums punching up during combat. A psychedelic music festival is backed by trippy blues and rock, with the audio distorted as if through water. Gothic settings are coupled with ghostly soundscapes, creeping bass notes cranking up the suspense. The music is a masterclass of atmosphere and tension. One of the most exciting moments is when you're finally out of the Mother Lobe and free to explore its lush surroundings. A bouncy score and a colourful cartoon map make you feel like a guest in your very own theme park. The outdoor environments are a joy to explore. Vines, poles, ropes and ladders allow you to scale the giant trees and cliffs of the questionable area. Here you can embark on a number of fetch quests. One feels like a challenge straight from a Tony Hawk's game. These distractions are very pleasant, and like a forgetful forest, it's an area in which it's very easy to lose yourself. This is a generous game, much larger in scale and scope than the previous title. Some mental landscapes, which already seem large enough to begin with, branch out into wider and deeper areas, with sub-levels stacked inside one another like Russian nesting dolls. These levels are elegantly tied to the theme at hand. For example, the buried memories of an alcoholic are locked away in glass bottles scattered across a series of remote islands, while the mind of a bookish fugitive contains a dimly lit oriental waterfront made of paper and ink. Here the markets sell fish so dodgy that even the street cats complain about it.
Don't eat the fish. It's full of mercury.
Travelling between islands can be done by way of Greasy Pole. It's a level I can't imagine will pass the Chinese censors anytime soon. The whole place reeks of crime and corruption. In a good way.
Can't extract fish that's past its prime.
When it's time to do battle, the controls are pleasantly responsive. I will say it's not the most precise combat system in the world, but will appeal to fans of traditional platformers. Enemy types are varied, each one vulnerable to a specific psychic power. This encourages you to chop and change tactics on the fly. There's a vast range of powers at your disposal, and they're addictive to use, more so if you upgrade them with the relevant pins. On the whole, the combat is a lot more balanced this time round, with the new toned down Side Blast encouraging a more tactical approach. The platforming has a very nice flow to it. Fast moves with an elastic springiness, like a character from an old cartoon. Riding the levitation board feels smooth as marble. Animations convey a sense of weight and flexibility, with each one of Raz's movements possessing a certain acrobatic flair.
Or even for that octopus thing.
No one's keeping score, Morris.
Once again, this is not the most precise platformer, but it does have a pleasingly retro feel. To compensate for the lack of precision, falling off a platform is far less punitive than before, stripping away a tiny fraction of your health as opposed to the whole. There are now slow-motion puzzles, gravity-defined surfaces, and 2D platforming minigames. All of these make each new mine feel fresh and exciting. Levels are tied together by an engaging story jam-packed with surprises.
Someone's looking a little shaggy. Well, not to worry. A fresh cut and you'll feel like a whole new person.
It's a dark and deliciously twisted story that sucks you in deep, like a Brothers Grimm tale laced with a cocktail of hallucinogens. Yes, the writing is dark, but it also knows when to ease the tension with humour. It also knows how to mix the two moods to create a sense of uncanny foreboding.
Wonder if there's any brains in there.
More than you got, Sonny.
This perhaps best demonstrated in the penultimate act. Some scenes near the end are so comically sinister that they linger in the mind long after you've put down the controller. It's all helped along by a stellar cast of voice actors. Each character has a distinctive voice, complete with their own funny quirks and foibles.
Nothing ever happens.
For example, Jack Black lends his voice to a ball of light, which follows the player across this kaleidoscopic landscape. After being flooded by sensory stimuli, he's infected by a childlike sense of wonder, and occasionally prone to panic attacks. Black's rock and roll persona is well suited to the role, essentially a big bundle of energy waiting to bust loose.
Dear universe, please shut up!
No one character outstays their welcome. In fact, there are some old characters I only wish were more involved in the story.
We won't know for sure until we get that squirrel tested for rabies.
Unlike the first game, which balances platforming with adventure-style puzzles, the sequel is much more focused on the jumping side of things. Powers are now used to solve puzzles, resulting in a more streamlined experience, but one perhaps too streamlined. As solutions are never too far away, you are not encouraged to really wander around. Puzzles rely far less on your ability to mentally map out a level, and more on your ability to notice clues in your immediate environment. And so gameplay feels quite taut at times. Like many modern platformers, you are often told what to do if you spend too much time dawdling.
I think the only way to get Hollis to take us on a mission to a casino is to get her to associate risk with money.
This can make you feel like you're being guided by an invisible director, rather than your own intellect. As pretty as they are, the levels are not as suited to replay as those in the first game. They seem to have been built for story first, replay second. This is largely due to their linear nature. In the first Psychonauts, many levels had a circular design. This made them fun to explore and repeat visits. and even the more linear levels had alternate routes to get from A to B. The levels in Psychonauts 2 mostly involve jumping from one platform to the next along a straight and narrow path. This problem is exacerbated upon return, as you find that previously connected areas have become detached and must be accessed via a teleportation system. Because levels have so many branches, the process of collecting leftover figments can feel overwhelming at times. While the boss designs are incredibly creative, some of the fights feel a little flat. I often found my brain switching off and my thumbs taking charge, rather than the other way around. Again, this comes down to a lack of puzzles and a bit too much signposting. Each battle relies on the rule of 3, breeding a sense of over-familiarity. Weak points can be deduced in a matter of seconds, and, unlike the bosses from the first game, there is no real sense of discovering things for yourself. There are no real eureka moments.
Partially digest the food and find me my ingredients. That's better.
The pin system is annoying for one simple reason. It doesn't differentiate between trivial abilities and power-ups. This means you can't change the color of your levitation board without sacrificing some power along the way. It would be nice to have these two types of pins kept separate. I also experienced a few small bugbears during my first playthrough, including vertically challenged enemies, awkward cutscenes,
I had that coming. I'll let you get back to practicing.
and repetitive voice lines.
I mean, in their defense, they're not called fasting healers.
While the writing for Psychonauts 2 is as sharp as ever, I did find there to be too many cutscenes and noticeable pacing issues.
Stand by for instructions.
Most of the cutscenes are brisk and interesting enough to keep fans entertained. However, they yank control away rather too often. Sections that should flow end up having a stop-start pace, and mental landscapes feel more fragmented as a result. That fragmented feeling extends to the physical world. In the first game, the world was constantly evolving along with the story. This meant that side characters would react to some major plot development just as you would expect them to.
Well, to tell you the truth, Earthling, this world is a goner. Right now, I'm just trying to hitch a ride to the next one over.
The side characters of Psychonauts 2 seem more static in this respect.
What's the holdup?
The interns are absent for a big chunk of the game, but then reappear near the end in a sequence that doesn't feel entirely earned. Given how important Raz's family are to the plot, they are treated as something of a sideshow curiosity. An earth-shattering twist results in little emotional fallout, and is dealt with a little too neatly. In fact, the last chapter as a whole is slightly anticlimactic. The final fight is a sloppy slugfest, which serves as a catharsis. It washes away a whole host of negative emotions in one clean swoop. What follows is a Disney-style wrap-up, which offers little in the way of insight. Characters who ought to have been reunited go strangely missing, and the murkier aspects of one person's past are hastily swept under a rug. The result is a happy Hollywood ending, but one that conveniently glosses over tensions in the plot. These are still, however, small bumps on an otherwise smooth ride. It's a brilliantly twisty ride that toys with your perspective in more ways than one. Like in the Carnival Funhouse, familiar faces are reflected back at a warped angle, and feelings of dread conjured with a song and a smile. It's a dark ride, but also a comforting one, and by the end of it you'll likely be left wanting more. Similar to the original, Psychonauts 2 is not as polished as some of its AAA peers, but outshines most in sheer artistic inventiveness.